welcome to today's grammar lesson. Today we're looking at the past progressive, which is also known as the past continuous tense. And we have done an overview of the continuous tenses, but this is in detail focusing specifically on the past form of this tense. So to start off, we're just going to talk about what this tense is. So the past progressive tense is also called the past continuous tense. It is used to describe a continuous, in progress, or ongoing action that happened in the past. This tense has a very basic structure that you've seen before. So this is the structure that we typically use for this. We start with the subject. Then after that, we have our auxiliary verb, which is be. So the auxiliary verbs are also known as helping verbs. They're not the main verb in the sentence, at least in the progressive form, they're not. Sometimes they support main verbs, like in this case, and they provide information about the tense. And when we're talking about the past progressive, this part here is what tells us that our action is happening in the past. Without that, we won't know. Then we have the main verb that tells us more about the action itself that is happening, and it always has ing on it, and the ing is what shows us it's continuous. At the end here, we have the object of the sentence. So here are some examples if we break it down. I was speaking Spanish. This case, the subject is I was is our form of be. Speaking, this is the main verb, and then we've added ing here. So together, this part was shows us it's in the past, and this part on the verb ing shows us it's a continuous action. Spanish is the object of the sentence. Looking at the next one, they were drinking coffee. They is the subject. Were is the form of be. Drinking is the main verb, so we have drink plus ing, and this shows us it's continuous, while this shows us it's in the past, and coffee is the object. We were watching movies. We is the subject. Were is the form of be. Watching, so we have our main verb watch, then we've added ing on the end of this, and movies is the object of the sentence. Finally, she was playing the guitar. She is the subject. Was is the form of be. Playing, we have playing our main verb and then ing to show it's a continuous action. The guitar, that's the object of our sentence. So that is the most typical breakdown of this tense. You will see some more structures throughout this video, but this is a common one that we use. So here's a little bit more that we need to know about the structure, especially with the form of be. In the progressive tense, the form of be is going to tell us a lot about when the continuous main action is happening. The form of be will take one of these forms when the action happens in the past. So we're going to look at singular and then we're going to look at plural, and we can clearly see the difference. For singular nouns and singular pronouns, we use was as the form of be that we're using. So here we see I was, she or he was. So these are all identified as singular pronouns. And then we have singular nouns. The girl was, a dog was. And so we can see in all of these cases that we have singular nouns, we're using was. Now, this could be a little bit tricky at first because if you can remember in the present progressive, the form of be for I is different than she or he, but in past it is the same. So that is a little bit complicated and needs to be memorized. Let's look at the plural nouns over here. So plural nouns and plural pronouns always use were as the form of be. So examples of these nouns and pronouns, you were, They or we were. The girls, we have an S on here, were, and dogs, we have an S on here, were. Now, this can be a little bit tricky, especially with you, because you can be addressing one person or many people. So even though there are cases where it's still addressing one person, doesn't matter. We always use were anyways. So even though at first it might seem confusing, that's why this follows that rule. So the progressive tense can follow this structure as well. So in this structure, we'd have the subject plus the form of be. And again, the form of be will take different forms, just like we looked at. There's a certain form for past, but also it depends on the subject. And then our main verb here is actually be again, but it's in the continuous tense. So being. And this is the main verb. And so because we have an adjective that's going to change, this will never change to another main verb unless you say, for example, do feeling or something like that. But in most cases we can use being and it would work fine. And then we have an adjective to follow. So an adjective is a describing word, and this can be a little bit tricky here because we can only use certain adjectives in this case. If the feeling that we're trying to describe or the state that we're trying to describe is temporary, then we're going to use the progressive tense. But if it's a permanent state, so it's more of a personality trait that doesn't change often, then we're going to use the simple tense. So if we look at our examples here, I was being generous. And so in that case, I was being generous. Generous is usually something that is temporary. You're not always generous 100% of the time. And so in this case, we identify it as a temporary adjective. So we can use this progressive form here and we see was being. He was being silly, where this is the same. It's a temporary form. We were being difficult. That's a temporary form. Being difficult means that you are not being easy to deal with or communicate with or something like this. Kind of rude in a way. Um, on the opposite end, we have polite. So we're not always polite 100% of the time either. So we could say this is temporary only in certain social situations. They were being playful. And so here again, you're only playful sometimes. It's kind of temporary if you're playing with your pets or your kids, for example, or your friends. However, down here we have she was being happy. And a happy person is more of a personality trait that is long term. So because of this, we won't typically say this. However, if you do provide some context, say this person isn't permanently happy and they're rarely happy, but there was a small temporary moment they were being happy, then you could use it. So that's where this gets a little bit tricky. It's best to use it with these kinds of adjectives, and I'll provide you with a list of uh, temporary adjectives and compare it to what's typically permanent adjective. So here is our page about adjectives. So temporary states, again, are conditions that are likely to change. So you're likely to change if you're being kind in a moment, or brave in a situation, or helpful, smart, patient, honest. However, for permanent states, conditions that are unlikely to change are tired, hungry, angry, excited, cold, bored. These can be states that we are always in. It's part of our personality. It's part of who we are at all times. Like I said before, if you say he is always happy, but yesterday he was being angry, then that's fine because he provided context to say it actually is a temporary state of being angry because he's always a different way. So if you provide context, then you can switch these around. It just needs to make sense based on the context that you provide. And here's another structure that we use in the progressive tense. So the progressive tense can follow the structure subject plus the form of be. And of course, we know that this will be was or were, depending on whether the subject is singular or plural. Then we have a main verb, ing. Now, in this case, you can only use certain verbs. And the verbs, there's not a specific list of what you can and can't use because it just depends on context or the situation. Then we have the form of be, and it always stays in this form. This is called the infinitive form. We have to and the base form of the verb. So we have to here, and then be is the base form of the verb. And so we always keep it like this. We never change it around. And then we have a noun. And the noun most commonly is used to describe a profession or job. So here are some examples that we could see. I was studying to be a teacher. He was trying to be an actor. We were training to be astronauts. And so these are other cases that we can use the past progressive when we're talking about trying to get the ability to have a certain job, occupation, profession, position, something like this. And so we'd have to use verbs that are related to that. So studying to be a teacher, that makes sense because you go to school for many, many years to be a teacher. And as soon as you're done school, you can be a teacher. He was trying to be an actor. Trying makes sense because you will try out for many auditions. You will maybe get rejected or accepted. It's a long process of attempting and maybe failing sometimes. So this is a good word to use. And training astronauts, of course, you do study to be an astronaut, but you also have lots of physical training. Working out, making sure your body is strong, making sure your health is strong, things like this, to be an astronaut. So training is better because that includes studying as well as the physical things. So these are some examples here. So now you might be asking yourself, so we have two tenses that we've looked at so far. We have the simple past and then we have the past progressive. So what is the difference? Well, the simple past is used in different situations compared to the past progressive tense. So for simple past, we use them for habits and routines in the past. So things that, for example, habits that we used to have when we were children. So I used to, or I went to soccer every Tuesday when I was 10, for example, completed actions in the past. So I finished my homework. Facts or truths in the past. So ancient people believed that the stars dictated the weather or something. Specific times or dates in the past. So for this, you can say the bus always left at 7 o'clock. And sequential actions in the past, I ate, I brushed my teeth, and then I walked to school. So one action after the other, we typically use simple past for this. And past progressive tense is ongoing actions in the past or interrupted actions. So when we have one long action and it's interrupted by a shorter action in the past, two actions happening at the exact same time in the past, providing background information to set a scene. And we use this to talk about a scene or an event that has happened in the past, and then temporary actions that happened in the past as well. So let's look at a little bit more about these situations and what they mean. So ongoing actions in the past. Past progressive is used to talk about actions that were in progress at a specific point in the past. So in this case, sometimes a time word is added to provide more clarity. Time words include yesterday, last week, last month, last year, at 9 o'clock a.m., for a duration of time for 30 minutes, for 1 hour, or something like this. Interrupted actions. We use this tense when we want to show that one action in the past was interrupted by another action. The longer action is in the past progressive and the shorter action is in the simple past. This type of sentence will always have two clauses, and the subordinating conjunction that we use to separate each clause is the word when. So an example, we were eating when the phone rang. So the long action, we were eating. So usually when you're eating, you eat for 30 minutes or 40 minutes with your family. When the phone rang, here the phone rings only for a few seconds. So it's very short action, it starts and it finishes, but this one is ongoing. So that is how we separate them. And we always use when we have a long and then a short interrupted action. Using the present progressive, so temporary situations. Temporary situations are not long lasting and they occur during a limited amount of time. For example, she was staying at her cousin's house. We also use two actions happening at the same time, and we use past progressive to talk about these two actions that were happening at the same time. So this will include two clauses with the subordinating conjunction while. An example, she was listening to music while he was cleaning the house. And you can actually put these in whatever order. If you start the sentence with the word while, then you must put a comma after. So there are some more specific rules there, but this is how you split it up. She was listening to music. You must put while in here, not when, because they're both long actions. So one last thing, using the present progressive, you can use this tense to set the scene. We use past progressive. This should say past. We use past progressive to describe what was happening around a specific event or moment. It is especially useful when you are telling a story about something that happened in the past. For example, it was snowing heavily outside last January. So we have subject it, then was is the form of be, snowing is the extended action ing. And we're talking about an event that happened in the past and trying to set a scene so somebody can imagine it, what was happening last January. So that's why we're using this tense. So a summary, past progressive tense. This tense is also called the past continuous tense. It is used to talk about actions that were ongoing, continuous, or in progress at some point in the past. Additionally, we use this tense to talk about two actions happening at the same time when an action is interrupted, temporary actions in the past, and setting a scene. So these are the structures that we looked at today: subject plus the form of be plus the main verb and ing on the end plus the object of the sentence. Then subject plus the form of be plus the main verb being, and it will not change, plus the adjective. Lastly, the subject plus the form of be plus the main verb ing plus the infinitive to be plus a noun. And remember, the form of be will always either be was or were, and that depends on the subject. Now let's test what you remember about this lesson. Here's our first example sentence. Then we have the verb talk here, to my friend on the phone last night. So how do we make this into past progressive? Let's see. I was talking to my friend on the phone last night. Here's another one. She and then clean is the word that we have here, while the children, and then we have another one, play with their toys. Now we have while, so we know that this needs to be changed to past progressive. And this needs to be changed to past progressive. So how do we do that? Example sentence. Okay, so here's the answer. She was cleaning. So she is singular, so we're going to use was. And then cleaning has the ing on it now. So that's a long action. We have the conjunction while. The children, this is a plural form of the noun. So this is plural. That's why we're using were for playing with their toys. One more. They, and then we have the word travel around Mexico last month. So travel. What can we do to change that into past progressive? They were traveling around Mexico last month. You'll see here we're adding two L's on ing. Doing this because I'm in the region of Canada and this is the spelling rule. However, it is different in different regions. If you want to know more about the spelling when you're adding ing on the end of a word, you should have a look at the present continuous or present progressive grammar video in detail. And that will tell you more about the spelling rules. There's a whole section about that in that lesson video. So how did you do? Hopefully you understand this just a little bit better. Keep on practicing your English. Keep on doing the best you can. And I'll see you next time. Bye.